Some disclaimers, Meze did send this out for a review. I appreciate them giving me early access to this. There are affiliate links to their website down below. If you do choose to use those, I would appreciate it, but they're definitely not necessary. And later in the video, we're also gonna be testing their boom mic. All right, thanks. Hey, what's up? I'm Josh. This is the 105 AER from Meze, a brand new headphone that is both priced and, in my opinion, sounds in between the 99 Classics and the 109 Pro. Right off the bat, this is a fairly comfortable headphone, being fairly lightweight at only 336 grams. It's a 50mm driver inside, and it's a relatively efficient headphone as well at only 42 ohms at 112 dB. So this will easily play off of full-size headphone amps, headphone dongles, some really good phones and laptops. That shouldn't be a problem with this thing. Now, the aesthetics are, in my opinion, to die for. This is one of the best looking headphones out there. I think some trypophobia bros are gonna have some issues with this, but everybody else, I think, generally has good things to say about this. And I think because of the aesthetics, before the pricing became available online, I think a lot of people were assuming this is going to cost more than the 109 Pro, but it actually costs less. There are some things you might wanna know though. This is a plastic on the outside, but it feels really robust. It doesn't feel cheap at all. It feels relatively well built like the rest of their lineup, which is good. Of course, you have the same spring steel headband that we see on the 109 Pro. And similar to the 109 Pro, some really close attention to detail when you look at the specifics of things. This holds up really well to a discerning eye. And the overall comfort of this is very good, actually. This is a very comfortable, fairly lightweight headphone. I think they did a great job with a lot of the actual wearable components on this. And yes, these ear pads are replaceable. It does a really good job of clearing your entire ear. And you can tell when you put it on that this isn't as open as some open backs, but still, of course, an open back. As far as accessories go, there is no extra set of pads that comes with this, but there is a fairly nice carry case. So accessories for this price range are relatively average. As far as sound goes, this is a very familiar tuning for a lot of Meze's products. It's a little bit elevated in the bass, a little bit reduced in the mid-range, and a little bit elevated in the upper mid-range / treble response. And that makes this very familiar sounding in some ways, but there are some differences compared to some other headphones like the 109 Pro. Bass response is a defining characteristic of the sound, and it is in some cases very, very good, and in some cases creates a slight problem depending on the music. Let's talk about that. So the sub-bass response is fairly clean and actually hits really hard if you're just listening to a sub-bass frequency. Now, depending on your personal preference, this probably isn't terrible, and it does add to a nice kind of a thumpy, impactful bass sound to it. But in terms of like actual fidelity, I actually think that compared to some other headphones in this price category, the fidelity of the bass is a little bit less than I would actually like, and it's a little bit boomier than I would actually personally prefer. But if you like a much more bass forward headphone, I think a lot of people are going to be satisfied with the bass coming out of here. It's just more of a discerning ear that might have a problem with the fidelity of it. Treble and upper mid-range are the next big characteristics that will pop through on this headphone. This has a little bit of a shoutiness, about 2,000 to 3,000 hertz, I'm guessing, although I haven't seen any graphs yet. But yeah, it's got a little bit of an elevation there. So some higher, brighter sounding female vocalists will come across a little bit harsh and a little bit shouty there. And that was really the biggest downside that I found with this area, though it is a little bit elevated from the mid-range. So if you're coming from like a Sennheiser headphone, like let's say a 6XX, which I could see this being a nice upgrade from, this will not have as much mid-range as that does, and it will spike up a little bit more in the treble response than you might be used to on that headphone and be a little bit brighter and a little bit more analytical up there than something like a 6XX. Now this comes with pros and cons. On one end, it's more detailed than something like a 6XX in the treble response, but it does come across a little bit more uneven. It comes across a little bit more shiny in some areas than that headphone does, and you may prefer the smoother sound signature of something like a 6XX. Now treble is also an area where I think the 109 Pro stands out in price and deserves a higher price tag. Is the fidelity of the treble is better, and the timbre is as well. You feel like you have a better, more thorough understanding of the coloration of treble, and things come across really clear on that headphone, and sometimes they don't come across as clear on this headphone. Now with the mid-range, this is a V-shaped headphone, but I think it's fairly well done in terms of how the mid-range plays out in that, because it does maintain a good level of clarity and independence from the background music. So it separates very well. And you feel like you have a clear understanding of the vocalist. So if you like a V-shaped tuning, I think this is the best you can ask for, is still maintaining that V-shaped kind of overall profile, but having well-defined mids that aren't completely sucked into the background or completely absent from the sound quality. And I don't think they are here. I think they hit with a good amount of authority without releasing fully from that V-shaped picture that they're providing with this. This is also, again, something that I feel like the 109 is a tad bit better at, is having a more active vocalist in the music. I don't typically talk about EQ in my reviews, but I think a simple fix for this would be a slight reduction to the mid-bass response and a slight enhancement of the mid-range frequencies, just a hair. I think that what makes this sound so V-shaped and the mid-bass sound a little boomy is because the separation between the dip in the mid-range and the upper kind of hike in the mid-bass response, that delta is so big that it sounds a little weird. I think bringing that delta closer together makes this headphone sound much more enjoyable, in my opinion, for my personal preferences. The mid-range in some other areas does remind me quite a bit of the 109 Pro in terms of just having a little bit less body than kind of a reference would, in my opinion, and a little bit more of an upper mid-range push like the 109 Pro has. So if you've listened to the 109 Pro and you like the vocals coming out of that, I think you'll like this as well. Sound staging is good, but not remarkable for this price category, but the imaging is very, very good. So your understanding of placement and stuff is very nice, but the far edges aren't quite reached on this headphone like they are on something like a Edition XX or a Sundara, for example. But it does soundstage wider than something like an HD 600. So that brings me into some comparisons. Let's say versus the new HD 490 Pro. That headphone is a bit more consistent overall through its frequencies. It's a bit flatter and a bit more neutral. And I think that a lot of people who are going to prefer a more neutral sound are not going to like this as much. This is a bit more colored, a bit more flavorful, and again, towards that V shape. So maybe a little bit more uneven from a target, but I think that some people will find that very, very enjoyable. And I think that's the type of person who should go for this headphone. I don't think that this is going to be made for someone who is either a measurement seeker or an analytical seeker. I think the HD series from Sennheiser is a bit better for people who like a lot of vocal-based music. And this is more made for people who like a little bit of fun, a little bit of enhancement, a little bit of alteration to the music that is a little bit more kind of thumpy and impactful and has that really enjoyable V-shaped quality. So now for their new boom mic, this will just plug straight into this headphone. And I was using the shit gunner to record the audio input from this microphone and play out for a lot of the testing, but I also tested on some higher end amps like my S9C reference amplifier and this new Mogwai tube amp that I've been absolutely adoring. I also wanted to take this time to talk a little bit about the Meze boom mic that you can get as an option and works really well with this particular headphone. This has a volume dial on the splitter that will adjust the headphone volume output. This also has a switch that will turn the microphone on or off in terms of your input into your computer. So if you need a physical switch for your microphone off, you have one. It's a little bit bright. It's more analytical sounding, not super lush. And you can move it down a little bit to get rid of some of those sharp sounds. But yeah, it's a fairly analytical mic and you can clearly hear that. And then I'm going to put on the PC38X just so you can hear a quick comparison. Now this is the PC38X and this is what I've been using for quite a few years now. But that boom mic being a 3.5 millimeter input for your headphones, you could use it for Arias, you could use it for any headphone that has that type of input, and that versatility is very nice. Though I think something like this for the money is a pretty good option as well. That comparison actually highlights just how good this microphone actually sounds. It's super clear sounding. It is a little bit less efficient going in than the PC38X. This comparison actually highlights quite a few things for me. One, this is not immune to plosives, but it's far less susceptible to plosives than something like the 38X. This is not only more clear though, but also far less nasally sounding. This is far more tonally accurate to my ear and just sounds generally pretty wonderful. I actually think this comparison would actually sound better if I had a normal voice right now, but I've been coughing for the past few days, so my voice is actually absolutely fried. But you can tell even in this comparison, even with the fried voice, that this is a very good mic. Only downside is it's a bit expensive at $80 and only comes in a 3.5 millimeter input for your headphones. But other than that, the quality of this is really good and the sound quality is excellent. So there's a real quick review and sound comparison for the boom mic from Meze. So as far as my conclusion to this headphone, unfortunately, I think Meze is suffering from a bit of success here from their previous releases. I think they set the standard so high with their 109 Pro and even higher with their Empyrean 2 that as far as their open back headphones go, this is like the least appealing one. That doesn't make it a bad headphone. It just means the other ones are so good. I would personally, if it was just my money and my budget, I would personally spring for the 109 Pro. But if you like a V-shaped sound signature, you like the aesthetics, you like this comfort and build quality, then I think that this is a fine offering for the price range that it comes in at. Unlike their Empyrean 2, I don't know that this is necessarily like a world beater. I think this is a good option. I think this is something that you'd probably want to listen to or get recommended from someone who you have similar ears to. But yeah, as of right now, in a perfect world, this would have some slight tuning adjustments for generation number 2, or maybe some pad adjustments could fix that, or aftermarket pads. And if I find some good ones, I'll update you guys on those. But yeah, as of right now, this is a fine addition to this price category, while not necessarily being the best at any one thing. It sounds good, feels good, and looks great.